This morning, America's First News starts right after this. How would you love a chance to save some money on car insurance? Geico can help. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote and get started seeing how much you could save.
From Compass Media Networks, this is America's First News. This morning, with your host, Gordon Deal.
Another infrastructure attack. Good morning, I'm Gordon Deal, along with Jennifer Kashenka on this Thursday, December 8th. Glad you could be with us. And here's what we have for you this hour.
Reports say gunshots have been fired at another Duke Energy facility, this time in Ridgway, South Carolina.
A former Border Patrol agent has been convicted of killing 4 women in Texas.
The win by incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock in Georgia could be a roadmap for Democrats in 2024. We'll have analysis.
And how about this as a fix for America's housing market? Loosen lending standards, even if it means more foreclosures.
Low rates of foreclosure activity signal that housing lenders actually aren't taking enough risk. They're locking out hopeful buyers who could have kept up with payments on their mortgage if only they'd been given the chance.
James Rodriguez at Insider on the need for home lenders to take more risk. More gunfire aimed at infrastructure. CBS News and others say an individual opened fire near a Duke Energy facility at Watery Hydro Station in Ridgway, South Carolina. The report says it happened late yesterday with someone pulling up in a truck, then using what appeared to be a long gun, and then speeding away. No one was injured. Meanwhile, the regional power supplier says it has completed repairs on substation equipment in Moore County, North Carolina, where sabotage gunfire Saturday night at 2 substations caused major power outages extending several days. County Sheriff Ronnie Fields.
Every investigator working on this case, state, local, and federal, know what you want, and that's answers. We want to know who and why. We are committed to getting you these answers.
CNN says a couple of motives are being considered. One is a thread involving the writings by extremists on online forums encouraging attacks on critical infrastructure. The second thread looks at a series of recent disruptions of LGBTQ events by extremists. A former Border Patrol agent who confessed to killing 4 sex workers in 2018 has been convicted of capital murder and will spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jurors heard recordings of 39-year-old Juan Ortiz saying he was trying to, quote, clean up the streets of his South Texas hometown. Prosecutors did not seek the death penalty. During the trial that began last week, jurors heard Mr. Ortiz's confession. He told investigators he had been a customer of most of the women, but he also expressed disdain for sex workers, referring to them as trash. Colette Morales lost her sister to Mr. Ortiz.
Brought justice to our loved ones, and you brought justice to our families, knowing that he is going to pay for what he did.
Defense attorney Joel Perez argued that Mr. Ortiz, a Navy veteran who had been deployed to Iraq, was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, had been suffering from insomnia, nightmares, and headaches, and was medicated and had been drinking that night. The Supreme Court is considering whether to block state courts from reviewing partisan gerrymanders of congressional district maps. The justices are examining the argument that the Constitution gives state legislatures an authority to draw maps that only Congress can challenge. We get more from this morning's Mike Gavin.
The case came from North Carolina, where the state Supreme Court applied provisions of the state constitution to invalidate a congressional map drawn by the Republican-controlled legislature. Liberal justices rejected the argument, sometimes called the independent state legislature theory, saying the legislature's own power is defined by the state constitution that created it. Conservative justices focused on a different risk, that of state courts usurping the legislature's role over drawing House maps. Gordon.
Thank you, Mike. The Supreme Court in March declined to reimpose the North Carolina legislature's map before the November election, but the court did agree to hear arguments over the independent state legislature theory, which gained attention in conservative circles after the decision resolving the disputed 2000 presidential election. Dell Technologies' Days of Deals for Business start now with fresh, limited quantity deals on tech to drive productivity. Save on select performance laptops and desktops powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping on everything, and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL. Thanks for being with us. Welcome into Thursday. Senator Raphael Warnock's path to winning Georgia's runoff is the one Democrats will need to win the 2024 presidential election in what has been a very red state, and that is maintaining their edge in the suburbs while motivating the black base to turn out. Here to explain is Josh Kraushar, senior political correspondent at Axios. Josh, take us through it.
Well, a blueprint, but just the reality of how Democrats win elections in swing states these days. It's by doing really well among persuadable voters in suburban areas, and we saw that with Senator Warnock's pretty dominant performance in Cobb County, which used to be a Republican stronghold, was Newt Gingrich's political base of support back in the day, and Gwinnett County, which is fast-growing, fast-diversifying, and now increasingly becoming a part of that Democratic coalition. So the suburbs, huge part now of any success for Democrats, and also turning out the base, turning out black voters in Georgia in particular. It made a big difference. Black turnout was up, according to preliminary analysis, in terms of compared to the November general election. And, you know, getting that base out, making sure the non-white part of the Democratic coalition continues to maintain support with the party, continues to show up in these key elections. That's going to be a part of any future Democratic Party success.
All right, so if you are a Republican operative listening to your analysis right now, are you saying, well, next time maybe we won't have a Trump-endorsed candidate and we'll do as well as other Republicans did, like a Governor Brian Kemp?
Yeah, well, there's good reason to think that, Gordon, because Governor Kemp won by about 8 points in November. Every Republican on a ballot in November, except for Herschel Walker, led and won, and won in some cases by pretty comfortable margins. So, you know, Georgia is still, I would say, a Republican tilting state. It still has a lot of Republican DNA in it, but they also care that the candidates are not too extreme, not too tied to Donald Trump. And you saw that not just in Georgia, but in almost every state where you had an extreme candidate, one who was tied to the MAGA movement, one who was endorsed by Donald Trump. In almost every case, they lost or at least badly underperformed where Republicans normally would expect to be. And that's a lesson that shouldn't be lost on the Republican Party. That they can win elections, they can win the presidency in 2024, but going the direction of Donald Trump, catering to the MAGA movement, is a political loser for the party.
We're speaking with Josh Kraushar, senior political correspondent at Axios. His story is called Warnock Win Cements Democrats' 2024 Blueprint. So touch on that a little more about candidate recruitment here on the Republican side.
Well, one of the biggest blunders, I think it's fair to say, is that the Republican Senate Campaign Committee, led by Rick Scott from Florida, did very little to shape the primaries, did very little to, encourage or incentivize governors, popular governors, to run for the Senate, did very little to, endorse or sideline bad candidates from running. And what happened, and look, a lot of it is Trump and Trump's endorsements, but what ended up happening is that you had a lot of poor candidates who were the standard bearers for the Republican Party in governor's races and Senate races across the country. And that clearly, there's been a lot of analysis since the election showing that Trump-endorsed candidates paid something about 5% penalty. So they performed about 5 points under where your average or generic Republican candidate would expect to perform. And that, look, if you're in a state like Ohio, if you're in a conservative state, maybe it doesn't make a difference because, you can rely on partisanship. But in almost every swing state in the country, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, that was what made the difference between winning and losing.
Thanks, Josh. Josh Kraushar, senior political correspondent at Axios. 20 minutes after the hour. On This Morning, America's First News. Here's Jennifer Kashenka.
And now, the 3 big things you need to know. Number 1.
Duke Energy says it has completed repairs on substation equipment in Moore County, North Carolina, as the FBI renewed calls for the public to help identify an unknown suspect or suspects behind sabotage gunfire at 2 substations that caused major power outages for several days. North Carolina State Senator Tom McClinnis.
I think we're just days and moments and hours away from catching the culprit that did this tragedy.
Meanwhile, authorities say an individual opened fire near a Duke Energy facility in Ridgeway, South Carolina. The individual pulled up in a truck outside the facility yesterday evening before opening fire using what appeared to be a long gun and then sped away. No one was injured.
Number 2.
The Supreme Court wrestled yesterday with a controversial legal theory that critics warn could upend federal elections, but that proponents insist is needed to limit the power of state courts to overrule voting laws approved by state lawmakers. Over the course of 3 hours, at least 3 justices signaled a willingness to embrace the idea that state courts should be curtailed in their power to strike down state laws governing federal elections, but 3 other members seem to be searching for a far less sweeping resolution.
Number 3.
A recent search of a Florida storage unit used by former President Trump yielded 2 items designated as classified. The search, conducted by a group assembled by Trump's lawyers, retrieved the materials from a West Palm Beach location and turned them over to federal authorities. An August search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate resulted in the seizure of 11,000 government documents, including about 100 records designated as classified. The man who caught New York Yankees slugger Aaron Judge's record-breaking 60-second home run is set to become a millionaire when the auction for the baseball comes to an end later this month. Corey Yeomans told ABC he just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
I hit right in the pocket. It made this loud pop sound, and I can't really explain it. Like surreal, exciting, just an overwhelming amount of like joy and happiness, and all the fans around me were going crazy.
On October 4th, the judge put to rest the notion he might remain stuck on home run 61 by season's end.
All right, thank you, Jen.
Innovation, resilience, agility. It's how Michigan businesses work together and continue to build the future. Our expertise, talented workforce, and collaborative environment are making a difference now and shaping the future. Join us and make your mark where it matters. Visit michiganbusiness.org/radio to put your plans in motion. That's michiganbusiness.org/radio.
Thanks for being with us. Americans' good intentions around holiday spending seemingly didn't survive the buffet of tempting deals retailers rolled out for Black Friday and Cyber Monday this year. Pretty soon, though, we'll have to pay up. Here's Megan Lenhart, senior writer at Fortune. Megan, explain.
So it's interesting. We're getting into that holiday shopping period. Look, I mean, many of us may have already completed our holiday shopping by this point, but certainly Black Friday, Cyber Monday, huge holiday spending for Americans this year, despite the inflationary environment that we find ourselves in. And it's interesting, we are seeing that, of course, as always, many of the hottest holiday gifts do involve electronics, those lovely, consumer goods, for your kitchen and things like that. A lot of those kind of items. And actually, this year, the inflation for those goods is actually not bad. I think last year we were all quite stunned when we saw so many shortages, for example, on TVs and a lot of our electronics, and really did push up the price because of scarcity. This year, lots of retailers got ahead of the game. They are fully stocked, and they are ready to not only deploy the deals, but also make sure that folks are really being tempted to spend on those big items as well as on smaller items that, again, are just, really well stocked this year.
Yeah. So along those lines, you referenced the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis saying that the average inflation on typical holiday gifts likely will be lower than the overall annualized inflation rate. How does that work?
Exactly. Can you believe that? We're going to actually see gift items be a little bit cheaper than the inflation that we're seeing on things like food and shelter and kind of the gas basic things that we need to survive. Yes, it turns out that because of some of those overstocks, because of some of just, the decreasing inflation in certain sectors, we are actually going to be seeing these gifts be slightly cheaper than they have been in the past when it comes to factoring in all of the inflation that we're all dealing with. So it's interesting, they were looking at things like TVs, for example. So the average price of a new TV fell 16.8% from last year. That's crazy. I feel like everyone should just, rush out and buy a TV, right?
Jeez. We're speaking with Megan Lenhart, senior writer at Fortune. Her piece is called "The Hottest Holiday Gifts Are Actually More Affordable This Year, but Could Hit You with a Massive Money Hangover" to kick off 2023. So what about taking on debt to start the new year following the holidays, Megan?
We have seen that Americans, despite their pledges and surveys and to themselves about not spending this year, are spending, and they're spending in a big way. Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals certainly did tempt a whole heck of a lot of shoppers to open their wallets this year. And, that, of course, brings into the idea that how are you going to pay for all of this? A lot of folks over the past couple of months, over the last year, have really been putting a lot more on their credit cards.
Thanks, Megan. Megan Lenhart, senior writer at Fortune. 30 minutes now after the hour on This Morning, America's First News. If you're like me and you prefer giving and receiving a gift over the holidays that's both thoughtful and practical, try Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is gifting greatness. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together specially curated gift packages. Go to omahasteaks.com and use code DEAL at checkout to get $30 off your order. Send an assortment of mouth-watering favorites like the legendary Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, and even easy-to-prepare comfort meals. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away, so shop early and beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code DEAL at checkout. Whether you're shopping for friends, family, colleagues, or yourself, every order is backed by the Omaha Steaks money-back guarantee. Go to omahasteaks.com and use code DEAL at checkout to get $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. That's omahasteaks.com and the code DEAL.
The top national stories with the context to make sense of it all. This is America's First News. This Morning with Gordon Deal.
Thanks for being with us. Welcome into Thursday, December 8. Gordon Deal, Jennifer Kashenka. Some of our top stories and headlines. Shots fired at another energy facility, this time in South Carolina. President Biden today expected to bail out a Teamsters Union pension fund with $36 billion. Apple's new encryption system won't sit well with law enforcement. 1,000 New York Times staffers to engage in a work stoppage today. House Ethics Committee investigating New York City's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Raiders and Rams in Thursday Night Football, and how 13 strangers road tripped after a canceled flight. That story in about 20 minutes. Too many foreclosures is obviously a bad thing, but it's also a problem to have too few foreclosures. How do you achieve the right economic balance? Here's James Rodriguez, senior real estate reporter at Insider. James, how would this work?
In an ideal world, of course, there would be no foreclosures at all. Foreclosures, losing a home is devastating, both financially and emotionally. But in the housing market that we are in right now, built on debt, foreclosures are a painful reality. And what I was looking at here is basically low rates of foreclosure activity signal that housing lenders actually aren't taking enough risk. They're locking out hopeful buyers who could have kept up with payments on their mortgage if only they'd been given the chance. And so that means that when we're seeing low foreclosure rates, that could also mean that there are all these people missing out on the wealth building opportunities that come with home ownership. And for most families, that's still the primary method of building wealth in America today. So there's no question that in the run up to the financial crisis in 2008, mortgage lending got way too loose. Now you have experts who are saying it's gotten way too tight, and we need to look at relaxing credit standards to allow more people to benefit from homeownership.
Okay, so the term you used here is credit box. We need a bigger credit box. Explain that.
Absolutely. So most residential loans, they're backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government-sponsored enterprises, or the Federal Housing Administration. And so these entities basically set a credit box to determine who gets a mortgage. And then those are the standards that lenders use to evaluate borrowers and decide, whether they're going to qualify for a loan or not. So that's things like debt to income ratio, credit score, amount of cash that they have on hand for a down payment, and all of those things come together to form this credit box. And you have organizations like the Urban Institute arguing today that we should expand that credit box, which would basically entail lenders taking on some more risk, increasing the possibility of foreclosures, but also giving more potential home buyers the opportunity to qualify for a mortgage.
Wow. We're speaking with James Rodriguez, senior real estate reporter at Insider. His piece is called "A Controversial Fix for America's Housing Market, More Foreclosures." This is almost like the Federal Reserve needing more job losses to cool off, right, the job market, which would then dial back demand, which would help inflation.
Yeah, I think the thing here too is, foreclosures are kind of this necessary evil in the housing market as it's set up today. And, we don't have you don't have experts arguing, we should just have more foreclosure on its own, and that would be a good thing. It's kind of just this, side effect of easing credit standards to allow more people to benefit from homeownership, to allow more people to qualify for loans and start building that wealth. So ideally what you would have is, kind of a small uptick in foreclosures, but a much greater increase in the number of borrowers who are qualifying for mortgages and able to keep up with those mortgage payments.
Yeah. So if you were going to relax the standards around credit scores, what exactly might that entail?
Yeah, so one of the things might be, lenders look at debt to income ratios. So you have maybe scenarios in which you would kind of relax that standard, allow people with slightly more debt. You also have the government-sponsored enterprises, the GSEs and the FHA, looking at ways to use alternative credit scoring. So considering, rent and utility payments, these metrics that haven't in the past factored into people's credit scores, but could potentially help qualify more borrowers. And, you also have maybe allowing lower down payments. That's another method that basically any of these metrics that kind of feed into the credit box, loosening those standards. And I think it's kind of an inexact science. You don't have people saying this is exactly what we need to do. I think you have people kind of arguing, moving in the right direction toward loosening that.
All right. So toward that point, I guess you had a piece where you said not everyone is convinced that opening the credit box is wise or even necessary. What's that argument?
Absolutely. So, you have one expert I talked to basically said, we're in this state of the economy, slowing growth or outright decline in home values as well. You don't want to be putting people into positions where they're basically set up to fail.
Thanks, James. James Rodriguez, senior real estate reporter at Insider.
Today's Mic Drop is brought to you by Dell. For your small business needs, call a Dell Technologies advisor today at 877-ASK-DELL.
Thanks for being with us. Welcome into Friday Eve. It's time now for the Mic Drop with this morning's Mike Gavin.
Good morning. Well, we're all looking to save a little cash to push us over the holiday season finish line, and we know that energy can be a big drain on our wallets. So here are a couple of viral energy-saving hacks you may or may not want to try out. We start in the car, where we'd all like to save some money on gas. According to ChooseMyCar.com, one way to make that happen is to put a bowl of water in the backseat of your car while you are driving. The bowl of water, in theory, acts as a deterrent for drivers who might be tempted to accelerate or brake unnecessarily. Ooh. They say this works best by using a small cereal bowl with the water about an inch from the top. They also say that, if you can, you should park your car at night with your windshield facing the morning sun so that you can spend less time defrosting before work in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a coaster.
Yeah, me too.
I know, unlike when I was perhaps 18 or 19, I no longer feel I have to race everybody at a red light.
Yes.
So I'm definitely a coaster, and been doing this for 17 years. I know the patterns on the way to work, and so I'm not a harsh breaker.
The problem is, though, even if you are a coaster, and I'm one of those as well, I still find myself unfortunately having to slam on my brakes a lot because of dealing with other drivers in a congested area that we live here. Going down Route 1 in New Jersey, near where we live. You slam on your brakes all the time, even if you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm also a believer in the like having the window facing the sun. I don't necessarily face the sun, but like my moonroof, I keep that open in the winter, hoping that the sun penetrates it before I get out to the car.
I see. Give a little extra warmth.
A little extra warmth. Yeah, I'm hoping the sun maybe heats the car a little bit.
I've never heard of that one.
But there's also the chance that by opening like the sliding plastic,
right,
to expose the window,
right,
that you lose some insulation.
Okay.
So any heat that was in the car may be escaping now.
Now, wouldn't you think the sun going through that glass would actually create more heat?
I'd like to think so. I'm just not that scientific enough to know if there's been a difference or not.
I mean, as long as you think it works, that's all that matters.
Oh, it's toasty in here. Yeah, it's psychological.
And from the car now to the home, one Instagram foodie says she's found a way to save some money on cooking, though your Italian grandmother might not agree. In a recent video, Monique, who posts under the screen name Ambitious Kitchen, shows her technique for saving on cooking gas while cooking pasta. She says that after you're boiling your water, you should let your pasta cook with the heat on for 2 minutes. Then turn the heat off, cover the pot, and let it sit in the hot water for 10 minutes. Monique claims this will give you perfect pasta every time, and some commenters did agree with her, but others were skeptical. One person wrote that the video needs to come with a trigger warning for Italians. Others question how this could work for all pasta types, since angel hair and rigatoni, for example, cook for different amounts of time.
Okay. I mean, who's got the courage to bring this up to an Italian grandmother?
Right.
Not I.
Yeah, probably not. Although some people said that this is actually just sort of how they cook pasta. Like they were taught this, I don't know, years ago.
It's almost like slow cooking it, essentially.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I guess you could just, adjust as necessary. People always want to nitpick these things, but you could always just adjust. Oh, I don't know, it's angel hair. Maybe it's 8 minutes or 9 minutes.
Right.
I mean, we don't have to get, super picky here with this.
Rigatoni needs 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Angel hair, 8, 9, like you said. Thanks, Mike. Dell Technologies Days of Deals for Business. Start now with fresh, limited quantity deals on tech to drive productivity. Save on select performance laptops and desktops powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping on everything, and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL. Hey, glad you're with us for a New Year's resolution that lasts. Start now. Start simple and be specific. Research shows almost half of all Americans make a New Year's resolution each year. ABCnews.com says most commonly people aspire to lose weight, right? Exercise more, quit smoking, eat better. Many will abandon their resolution by a month or less into the new year. One barrier is that forming a habit takes time, about 66 days on average. And studies show that simpler habits form faster than complicated ones. Drinking a glass of water each morning will stick a lot more quickly than doing jumping jacks before every workday, for example. Proper planning is also important. One expert says a reasonable goal for someone is a SMART goal, explaining that SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For example, a goal to run 4 days a week for 30 minutes is more specific than I will run more. 8 minutes now in front of the hour on This Morning. Once again, here's Jennifer Kushenka.
And now, the 3 big things you need to know. Number 1.
President Biden is again calling for a ban on so-called assault weapons, speaking last night at a vigil honoring victims of gun violence.
We've seen you turn pain into purpose. Together, we've made some important progress. The most significant gun law passed in 30 years, but still not enough.
It was the first time a U.S. president has spoken at the National Vigil for All Victims of Gun Violence, which is now in its 10th year. It's led by the Newtown, Connecticut Action Alliance Foundation.
Number 2.
Iran has executed a prisoner convicted for a crime allegedly committed during the country's ongoing nationwide protests, the first such death penalty carried out by Tehran. The execution comes as other detainees also face a possible death penalty for their involvement in the protests, which began first as an outcry against Iran's morality police and have expanded into one of the most serious challenges to Iran's theocracy since its 1979 Islamic revolution.
Number 3.
The House is set to give final approval today to legislation protecting same-sex marriages in federal law, a monumental step in a decades-long battle for nationwide nationwide recognition of such unions. A law requiring all states to recognize same-sex marriages would come as a relief for hundreds of thousands of couples who have married since the Supreme Court's 2015 decision that legalized those marriages nationwide. The bipartisan legislation would also protect interracial unions. Peru's Congress overwhelmingly voted to remove President Pedro Castillo from office shortly after the Peruvian leader plunged his country into turmoil by announcing he would dissolve the legislature to avoid impeachment. Lawmakers declared Castillo morally unfit to hold office. If you have plans to travel to London over the holidays, take note. Border Force workers at several major British airports, including Heathrow and Gatwick, plan to go on strike for several days over the Christmas period in a dispute over pay. The union says 2,000 to 3,000 staff would be involved in walkouts December 23rd through the 31st. They were hoping for $1.2 million. They've gotten just $765,000. Organizers of the World Cup in Qatar were expecting an influx of visitors for the month-long event, but that hasn't happened. And with 8 games left out of 64, a surge in visitors at this stage seems unlikely. More than half of the 765,000 have now departed.
So strange that sports planners would overestimate.
Innovation, resilience, agility. It's how Michigan businesses work together and continue to build the future. Our expertise, talented workforce, and collaborative environment are making a difference now and shaping the future. Join us and make your mark where it matters. Visit michiganbusiness.org/radio to put your plans in motion. That's michiganbusiness.org/radio.
Thanks for being with us. What do you do when your evening flight is canceled and you really need to be somewhere in the morning and there are no other available flights? CNN says in the case of 13 total strangers in Orlando late Sunday, you hire a minivan, form an impromptu community, and go on a road trip, taking hundreds of thousands of TikTok viewers along for the ride.
So me and a bunch of strangers in my family, we decided to rent a 15-passenger van and ride back 8 hours to Tennessee.
An evening Frontier Airlines flight to Knoxville had just been canceled. The gang of stranded passengers went downstairs to the car rental area. Hertz had no lines, and the one guy was offered a 15-person van. Hours later, they arrived in Knoxville tired but happy and new friends. For Jennifer Kashenka and Mike Gavin, I'm Gordon Deal. Thanks for listening to This Morning, America's First News. How would you love a chance to save some money on car insurance? Geico can help. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote and get started seeing how much you could save.